this is a good transition point to say, speaking of where we are in terms of film, TV,
things. Oh my gosh, and media.
And media. Season 2 of Community is what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah.
If anybody is back from the first time, I don't know if we've kept anybody. I don't know if anybody came for the first time around. That's what we're hoping.
We're here anyway.
But we're here anyway because we're not here for you, we're here for us.
Yes.
Yep. We are here for you, for the people who want to be here, but we're also doing this just again because we love
This is an overindulgent conversation that we just happen to record. We just hope you like it.
That's true. We're here to serve us, but then also hopefully you guys like what we have to say. So for anybody who doesn't remember us, I'm Miranda. Next to me is
Ashley over here.
And I'm Stone. Next to Ashley, I guess.
In case you're wondering our positioning.
I feel like that might be important. People need to visualize. Here to talk about Season 2 of Community. We met last week, which was the 10-year anniversary of the pilot.
Moment,
Huge moment. So we're here talking Season 2 today.
Great season.
We were all talking about it a little bit more as we got ready for this.
Yeah.
I think we all really feel like this is the season where things really pop off.
It enters its stride here. It's got the budget, and it's like, okay, and people like it. Cool. NBC's like, all right, we're going to invest in this, and this is pretty cool. Solidifying its time slot at this point.
Exactly. Like I think they kind of got a response they wanted from season 1. It was mildly successful. They got a little bit of a following. So when they came back for season 2, they were just like, they really put their foot on the gas and just went for it.
What a great way to put it.
And they did what they wanted instead of like the typical format, or that they were playing with kind of in the first one.
In the first one, they very much did the love triangle. They tried to follow a very typical sitcom sort of like trope and formula. And I feel like season 2, they're kind of like, you thought that's what we were, but we're something else entirely.
Yeah.
And that's what you're sticking around for.
And you know what? I love exactly. That was my next point is like all of that and then attached to, we also have some money.
We got
maybe a little bit more than season 1 because season 1 was like we need to sell ourselves.
Exactly.
They
had to prove ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. But by this time they had enough of a little bit of a following, people who were interested in the stories that were being told, the characters, and then on that point it's like, okay, well, let's put some money behind it. So then they have just as many episodes as they did. Actually, they have 2 more than season 1.
Really?
They go from 22 to 24. They have budget for just a few more, which means they get a fleshed out, eventually we'll talk about it,
the last
2 episodes.
Yep.
We'll spoil it now. The Return of Paintball. Which is just
evolved.
Everything. It's evolved. It's everything that the first one wanted to be and just had
and couldn't be yet.
Exactly. And now has the time, space, budget, everything to make it that.
To be fully fleshed out and incredible.
Yep.
And a lot of us are going to talk about today that it is one of our favorite seasons, if not maybe for some of us our favorite season.
I think it's actually my favorite
season.
Okay,
nice. So you've come around
to
that.
I go back and forth between season 2 and season 3 a lot, but I think this one really might be my favorite season. Yeah,
I like it because it's the good times. It's like we got money for Winnebago.
No, and we'll get into that. It's the good times for the show, but then for like the characters in the show, it's good times, and then it's also a lot of like turmoil and a lot of other tension and stuff going on, and I'm very excited to get into that.
The family aspect is turned up for sure. It's more of the focus than the relationship.
We all know being a part of a family.
Family antics.
Big, small, anything. There's drama, there's antics, there's
people
conflict.
You like, people you don't.
This is where I think they start to explore different kinds of dynamics. And we see that a little bit in season 1. They dabble in it. This one, they're like, no, you're going to get a whole Pierce, Annie episode.
Yes.
You're going to get that whole dynamic, and you're going to get a whole episode where it's Shirley and Abed.
And I think it's because the characters, like you said, in season 1, they're still trying to get to know each other. Season 2, like you said, they know each other at this point. So now it's just like, let's let them run with that.
Yeah.
This is who they are, and let's put them in an episode together and see how they react with each other.
And they build on that. See what they'll learn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And see kind of where they end up naturally, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's so fun about that is like where it ends up isn't always what you expect it for these characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the cool thing about it, and we'll talk about it more as we go through, and we all kind of saw it, is like where they end up is sometimes surprising, but we always understand why they got there.
Oh, totally. It makes complete total sense based on their story they went through the entire episode.
Exactly. And who they are just as characters fleshed out overall. So I think that's a perfect place to transition and segue into talking about episode 1. So
season 2, episode 1.
Season 2, episode 1, Anthropology 101.
Yep.
I will say with season 2, it is a little, what's the word I'm looking for? Cameo heavy. We get a lot of like guest stars, which is awesome. It's really cool. I feel like, again, they have a budget. By this time, they have a little bit of a following.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Sometimes I feel like the characters are insertions a little bit.
Yes.
They pull us away from the story a little bit, but overall, I think again, this is a really cohesive season. This is really where it takes off into like, this is what Community actually is. Season 1 was us trying to get a following, trying to get a budget, and trying to get everything that we have now.
Right.
Now you're going to see us run with that.
Yeah,
using tropes to get to hook themselves in.
Yep, they were trying their hardest to be, I think, quote unquote normal in season
definitely.
1 to kind of get everyone to watch. Yes, palatable. That's perfect. And then in season 2, they were like, this is who we really are, and this is yeah, and I love it. Like Anthropology 101, first episode of season 2, directed by Joe Russo.
Oh, very cool. Russo's off the bat.
Yep. Yeah, coming in hard with a great episode. I love this episode because it immediately addresses all of the
mops up
drama
season 1.
and issues from season 1.
That's a great point. And in mentioning that one of the Russo brothers directed it, upon rewatch, I realized there's a lot going on in the episode.
So much.
It starts out very cinematic. Abed's like, and we're back. I love that he's like...
Yes, he immediately references that.
Yeah, he's like, all right, season 2 of the show that I'm living in is airing right now, and here we go. And then we get this whole opening montage of a preview, a peek
this
into...
whole, like, continuous, like, camera shot, and you see each character introduced,
in their home environment.
Definitely.
We get definitely Stone and I were talking about it a little bit more earlier. It was like they're peeling back the layers. We actually get more of an intimate look into their backstory. Even if it's just a peek, it's like we see Shirley in bed with all of her boys, with the crosses all over the house. It's like,
you see Jeff working out in his apartment alone, and his apartment's like empty. There's nothing there. It's all gray and dark.
His personal dark ritual.
Exactly.
I'm indifferent to color. I'm indifferent to everything.
Like, this is still who each of these characters are. Annie's in her little room combing her hair, daydreaming about, I wonder who.
I wonder who.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about
Pierce's
more.
80s barf room, which is just like, wow.
And I love that it goes from Abed in Detroit, who is in the same style room as Pierce, because he's living with Pierce.
Then it starts with, we hear the dean previewing everybody about, you remember where we left off last season? And I love how aware the show is of itself.
Yeah.
And so the dean's giving everybody a preview and basically reminds everybody that Britta made a big ass out of herself.
At the dance.
The tranny dance. I think we both agreed, Ashley and I were talking about it. We're like, oh shit, we're on the same page. Story arcs, I think for me, the A story is definitely the consequences of the tranny dance. The transfer dance.
Exactly. The love triangle situation.
100%. So it's like Britta has to deal with the fallout of her professing her love for Jeff at the dance, and then Jeff has to deal with the fallout of kissing Annie after Britta professes her love for him.
Yeah. He has to address both of those.
In the same episode.
He's like mopping up after his like decisions, and like he has to kind of account for it, and he's doing it, sloppy, like a dirty lawyer.
Like Jeff Winger does, exactly.
And on that note, I think it's so funny you say that because Britta at first is so like ashamed of everything that's going on. Yeah. She's so apologetic, and Jeff only cares about that it's like it affected his stock with the women on campus.
Yep.
And meanwhile, Britta is like hiding herself, mortified, fearing that like the whole school is gonna
judging her.
I love that she was laying on the couch, making herself seem small and hiding until they started talking
started talking about her and then moved on.
What's up?
Yeah, they were all talking about Toy Story before.
Toy Story 3, and they go crazy.
And then Troy says, hey, Toy Story. I mean
Britta. Thank you so much for catching that, because when I saw that one, I was like, oh, fuck. And that's the thing. Britta's like, oh, great. Like, I don't really matter. And now, I'm afraid everybody's judging me on campus and things like that.
I don't have my friends behind my back now either.
Yep.
Exactly. And then it's really funny because then I think we're all thinking that that's what's going to happen, right? And then the whole situation is flipped on its head. And basically, when Britta leaves the whole study room, she's confronted with these two girls, and she thinks she's going to have her ass handed to her. And then they're like, you are so cool.
Yeah.
And they love her.
Britta basically can't help herself. We learn that she's somebody
like Jeff.
She's very much like Jeff in that she loves to be liked.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah,
and it's
it
the
empowers
first
her
time.
ego.
Yeah, it definitely empowers her ego, and it's the first time that she's had people really like her like this, because she's admitted in season 1 she was always unpopular, so she just feeds it into this and
she has her flock of girls.
Yes, and she loves it, and Jeff absolutely hates it.
Yep.
And there's even more tension going on between the two of them until Jeff realizes through a little conversation with Annie when she's trying to be like, oh, hey, remember me, that he needs to beat Britta at her own game.
Yeah.
1,000%. And in doing that, he's like, oh, you want to do this? I'll up the ante, follow your own rule book, and I'm going to do the exact same thing you did to me as a big fuck you.
Exactly.
Because one thing Stone and I talked about in rewatching it was like, Jeff is only willing to try hard when he's when it's about himself and he's trying to do something for himself.
Something, make a point.
Something, trying to get revenge,
whatever
it may be, but that's
going to put him back on top or, make him seem like he's more in charge of the situation.
Yeah. He already, tried to, do his version of Olive Branch where he's like, can we just, chill this and can you, do me a favor because we're friends? And she's like, oh, well, you're not really doing that.
Oh, yeah,
and
he's like,
she's
I feel like
mad.
you're getting high on your own drama.
Yeah.
And high on my own drama? Yeah.
But then one thing I do like about Britta, and again, we talked about it last episode, Britta and Jeff are very much same sides of the, different sides of the same coin.
Definitely.
And so Britta's fucking up in the ante too. So the whole reason Jeff wants to beat her at her own game is because in the cafeteria she throws a fucking drink in his face, and then she's just like, ooh, does her whole stupid little dance,
dances off into her new like little crowd of fans,
fans and followers,
partying and I'm sure it gets in on
and that are 100% feeding into her, and it's like, and maybe in that moment that they cared about you and liked you and were like, oh, you're vulnerable, we relate to you in this moment. She just takes it, runs with it, and then she instantly becomes so unlikable, which is something we see again later, like in the episode where they deal with the Mean Girl clique, which we'll talk about later.
Yes.
But we see that Britta does that. Jeff does the exact same fucking thing. So he can't handle being, made to feel this small. He always needs to be in
inferior.
Control. So then, he decides to beat Britta at her own game and basically just take what she does and flip it on its head.
Yeah, and take control of the situation.
Yeah, so in the middle of their anthropology class, which is taught by the amazing Betty White.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she's our first cameo back.
Yeah, Jeff professes his love for Britta in the middle of their anthropology class.
Yeah.
And just tries to call her out in front of everyone, very much in the same vein that she did to him.
Yeah. She sees what he's doing.
Yeah,
and she's
like Britta sees right through it.
It's great. It's beautiful.
So they have both these egos trying to get as crazy as possible.
Yep. You're so right. And
unstoppable force, immovable object, what are they going to do?
And then they just go fucking nuts.
They have like the world's best, most awkward on-screen television kiss that I've ever seen in a TV. In like
eyes open the whole time.
Oh my god, the noise they make is just
and it's just so like, oh yeah, no, this is the worst.
This is horrible. And then it goes
for the worst reasons.
And then that just spirals out of control until it ends up causing all of this conflict with the group, and they're all forced to deal with each other.
Yeah.
Again, very much in the same way as in the pilot, where all of their issues come to a head and they all have to address each other.
Confront their actions.
Exactly. It's revealed that Jeff kissed Annie after the dance, after Britta professed her love to him, and then Annie punches him right in the face.
In the face.
And after they figure out they slept together doing paintball.
Exactly, because this is basically a secret to everybody.
Off the whole chain.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's so funny because I think, like Ashley said, it creates conflict within the whole group because then everybody responds to their relationship differently.
Yep.
Shirley's so happy because they're not going to be sinning anymore.
Yeah.
They're going to be finally pure in their relationship, everything like that. She even encourages Abed to see their relationship as an adventure.
Exactly, because he's bored with it.
Boy, he goes with that perspective.
Annie is horrified by it.
Exactly. She's horrified and sickened by it, and she won't admit that, like, she obviously still has feelings, or she has feelings for Jeff following this kiss, and she's been thinking about it all summer, and Jeff very much tries to put that off, which, again, that's
all women deserve to be with me.
For me,
One
this
is my
is
favorite.
the second half of the A episode. It's like I said, it's dealing with Jeff and Britta, but also Jeff and Annie.
Yeah, it's a triangle.
And that's the thing, we're faced with how young Annie is. Like, I checked our kiss on the makeout meter,
in this week's issue of National Review.
Whatever,
Annie.
And one thing I like is that the whole episode is about dealing with the consequences of your actions.
For everyone.
Everybody has to deal with these kinds of things. So like we said, everybody's dealing with the relationship differently. Abed's over this. He wants to have fun or antics. We finished with paintball last season.
Where's
he says he's ready to move on to bigger, high-paced escapades. And it's like, it's Dan Harmon kind of saying, like, I'm ready to move on with, like, the real show that I'm really crazy about, but, like, I have to deal with, like, all my season one tropes.
But I have to be more self-contained.
Yeah. I feel like Abed is, like, the social commentary of the show, of people who are ready to stop watching these, like, typical rom-coms, things like that, and we want something a little bit different. But then also, like Stone said, it feels like Abed is perhaps Dan Harmon's, like, commentary as well. Like, we catered to everybody in season one. Mm-hmm. I got what I needed from it so I can make the show that I want to make, and now I'm going to make that show.
Now I'm ready to move on.
Is it based on these real characters in my life and different things like that? Yeah, but now I have these real living, breathing characters.
Yeah.
Like, let's see what they can do.
Separate entities.
What are they capable of?
Yeah.
And that's why season 2 is able to go off and do all of these amazing things
that it does.
That's so true.
Fun
and they set that up in the very first episode. It's genius.
Yep.
Exactly. And that's why for me, and it's just my opinion, I this isn't based on any research, this is just my opinion, I think Abed's trying to up the ante the whole time.
Sure.
Because he's like, oh, you guys want to do it? You want to be in a relationship? You want to, you want to do that story for this week? Cool. Here's the fucking ring. Are you going to propose to her? And then they don't back down.
Yeah.
And they're like, yes. And then Britta fights for the ring, and then she proposes to Jeff, and then that's the whole thing. They're getting married. Abed runs away. brings in a full Irish singer.
And George Clooney lookalike to officiate their wedding.
And while he's running away to go and get them, like Ashley said, that's when all the shit hits the fan.
Yeah, everything hits the fan.
Britta admits that she's like, I never loved you or whatever, and Jeff feels like he won. He's vindicated, and everybody's sitting around like, Jeff,
are you
we're
fucking kidding me?
Past that.
We're laying all of our shit out here on the table right now, and you still just care about
winning?
I mean, you fucked Britta, you kissed Annie,
Yeah.
and you're still here trying to, like, affect your stock with women on campus. It's like, fuck you. We don't care. You're putting all of our, like, relationships in jeopardy by just doing whatever the fuck you want to do.
Yeah. Another thing that comes to light is, like, a C story or a B story of Troy and Pierce coming back from, like, them living together, and Troy has, like, an old white man says, and then Jeff tries to, like, manipulate the situation, push the hot seat onto Troy, which he calls out. And then that's, like, another tension that's brought up.
And I think one thing that we can all agree on is, like, seeing how they deal with conflict in this situation is very telling.
Throwing it on each other.
Is what they do for literally the rest of the series. Anytime people start getting called out, it's like, oh, what about you? What about you? What about you?
It's all involving another drama all the time.
It gets worse and worse and worse.
I love it.
And it's funny because we get a preview of it here, which this idea
is very telling of the whole season. Yeah.
And this is something that we see that they deal with conflict all the way through season.
Always. Oh my god. Season 6.
Which is the best
dealing
version
with conflict
of this. I love it because so much conflict is happening. Troy is mad that Jeff is hogging all the hotties, compares them women to donuts. You don't eat one and lick another.
Yes.
And so, but then that's telling of how Troy feels about his place in the group, where he's just like, Jeff is always number one.
Exactly.
He does whatever he wants.
All the girls.
Every time that I get into a situation, they're hotties that'll never get with me, you know? So,
and
it ends with Abed basically calling Jeff out on being an unlikable
making
jerk.
an analogy to prove how aware he is of the situation. I know the difference between TV and reality. In TV, we have likable leading men, storylines that make sense, structure. In reality, we have you, and calls out Jeff being like, I know, like, you're unlikable, you're a liar, people don't necessarily gravitate towards you,
Everyone's
and, like, you display your negative qualities all the time, and, like, everyone sees that, and I'm not oblivious to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though I am doing this show, and I'm trying to do my own thing, like, I still see your true colors.
Check out from, like, my, like, bit, it's like, you're being an asshole. Yeah. And it's clear, like, I don't have to do a bit about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it hurts a little bit.
It does.
He's real.
It is. It's
like,
stinging.
Ow, dude.
And it's 1,000% accurate, and that's what hurts him so much, because Abed is very clinical, but because I really believe, since he's so much separated from the situation and is watching like an audience member, he can actually, like, key in on those things and see the things in people that they can't see in themselves. Because, you know, Jeff would never want to admit that to himself.
Absolutely not, because Jeff thinks he's perfect.
Exactly. So I love that, because that's how it ends, and then it goes into commercial, and it's like biting, right?
Yeah, and it's like, oh damn, what's going to happen to our study group?
Exactly. So then after that meeting, we're back in the anthropology class, and Jeff has no one to sit with because everybody just saw him be a big asshole, right? And so he goes and sits next to Starburns. And this is really a part of the episode that's important to me, because Starburns highlights the fact that Jeff has changed. Yeah. He basically points out, he's like, well, the whole reason you had the study group was to get in the blonde's pants. You made out with the brunette.
Bonus.
Didn't you score? Yeah. Like, this was best case scenario.
And more.
Yeah. And Jeff realizes, like, I actually care about these people.
I want more than that.
I want more than that. Yeah. And at this point, I'm not the guy that I was in season 1, who was just trying to get with Britta the whole time. Like, I've moved past that, and like now I've caused real damage between myself and the group,
possibly
the group within each other. Exactly. Now we don't know where anyone stands, and I don't like how I feel about myself. I think that that's really where Jeff starts to realize, like, these are the people that saw more in him, and when he's letting them down, he sees that he's letting himself down
at the same time. So then Jeff has this really great moment where, again, in the anthropology class, he puts himself out there, and he actually addresses the study group and tries to apologize to them by accomplishing their assignment together, and Betty White full-on chokes him out. It's awesome.
Exactly. This is why you fail.
That's the thing. It's like awesome. It's really like trying to be a sweet moment. Jeff's like, our project was to figure out what the best tool was in this whole toolbox or whatever, and really we just need to respect one another. We can't get anything done unless it's respect. And like Ashley said, that's his way to apologize to the group, and he does it in very winger style fashion through a winger speech.
Yep, of course.
In front of the whole class. It's a whole grand display, but it really is a sweet moment because he's putting himself out there. He's making himself vulnerable. And then, like Ashley said, Betty White loses her fucking mind.
Yeah.
She's like, actually, you're wrong. So then they all reconcile in the hospital, or it's actually probably like in the nurse's office at the school.
That's probably the nurse's office.
And then Chang comes in and admits that he's wanted to be in the study group the
whole
entire
time. It's why he joined
and
anthropology
he says,
class.
Exactly,
Chang
one of my
puns?
favorite lines. Yeah, one of the best Chang puns. Is there any room in this pocket for a little spare Chang?
Yeah.
And it's brilliant.
I love it so much because this is, again, dominoes into just everything that happens for the rest of the
Yes,
series.
it's such a good glimpse
Definitely.
with the study group and with Chang, because all of it's just going to keep on building. So this whole great, like, end scene with Chang having, like, dual personalities, like Gollum and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and he's
You're
teetering
right.
on insanity.
And he's going back and
they're
forth.
like, oh, they don't like you, they'll make fun of you. And he's like, no, but they're my friends. They're my friends.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that's the thing. It's like, oh, you think that's just, like, the funny and
Yeah,
kind of
it's
scene.
just,
That's
this
how
hilarious thing. No.
Ooh, that
No,
takes
that's-
some attention, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so basically, like we talk about, sets up the Chang mental health thing, which becomes a huge thing in season 3, which we won't spoil anything here. You know, we see how the group deals with conflict.
Yep.
And then we also see that that Jeff is willing to grow and change for the group, and that the group is willing to, again, forgive him for his mistakes, and they can still come back together after, you know, something like
They really want to be
a
together.
love triangle.
Yeah.
It is pretty traumatic. It
It's
could
really
have
compromising.
really torn apart the group, and they came back and they're a family, right?
And I think it also sets up a lot of tension to come for season 2 as well, because it's like we're back and we're still fighting, so that's not something that's going to go away. That's just something that we do.
And 7 people with such big personalities, there's definitely going to be places where they overlap, and there's definitely going to be places where they completely diverge.
Yeah.
And that's just a huge thing that's followed throughout the rest of the series. And I think that that's awesome because, again, it's about a community. You're with diverse people from different religious backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds. And so that's why the way that they have their worldviews are so different. And so the way that they deal with conflict is so different. And that's what makes the show so funny, is watching how they all deal with conflict so very differently. So that takes us into episode 2, Accounting for Lawyers. Who wants to take over this one?
It's also directed by Joe Russo.
Oh, that's rad. Jeff is confronted by his old partner, Alan, and like it instantly brings out like an aspect of Jeff that's kind of been hidden. It's kind of just like, whoa, where'd this guy come from?
Yeah, this persona that he puts on that he had to use as a lawyer
this
back
air
then.
of absolute confidence and like intelligence.
Again, this
His
season's
past.
about peeking more into these layers,
the world
right?
that Jeff exists in.
Exactly.
I like Abed says he's from your origins.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
I
love it.
Hilarious.
The referential stuff is fun.
Yeah, so like so Jeff is totally confronted with his past life, and it's like he's at Greendale, very much committed to trying to be this new person, but now his old life is like, hey, we're still here. What's going on? We want to party.
Don't you miss us?
Ooh, we don't
because
like
look
this.
at all the hard work that you have to do to be friends with like a family and care about people.
Exactly.
Don't you remember this
Caring
old life
about
that you used
people
to
is
live?
hard.
Yeah.
Exactly. And all of his friends want him to join a pop and lock-a-thon this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. So Jeff is reunited with Alan, former friend from his law firm. B is the Pop and Lock-a-thon that's going on. Exactly, that's going on in the background, which we'll obviously get to. And Annie feels like she recognizes Alan.
Yes.
And then basically, as they're hanging out during a study
Coily reveals that she does know him from NA.
Yeah, Narcotics Anonymous, basically.
Yeah, so then the group confronts him about this, and Jeff's just like, you don't have any proof. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to ruin my career. I'm going to go to this cool party and do cool stuff.
Friends,
and kind of indulge in his old lawyer friends, go to that environment.
On that point, he's so living in the past and being nostalgic about everything that he's very much like dissociating himself from the group. The group wants to do the Pop and Lock-a-thon or whatever, and that's where Chang starts slipping in, and he's like, hey,
trying to fill the void.
Jeff's leaving. Jeff is going to be too big and bad for you guys. Let me come in and fill in because you need 7 people for the Pop and Lock-a-thon. And they let Chang join the group to be part of the team. But then he finagles his way to say, okay, well, if we win, you guys let me join the study group. So all of these things are kind of happening at the same time. It is a true A and B story that's going on.
Stakes are pretty raised, They
confront Jeff. They have proof that Alan's the one that turned him into the bar and narked on him.
Verbatim,
And when I watched this, I was like, oh, ouch. Jeff Winger's speech is pretty harsh. Basically, that's where he talks about caring being an infection. If you care about me, don't.
Yeah.
Don't make me care about you guys because, like...
It'll take me down.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's, like, facing a fork in the road. He's learning to care, and he's not acknowledging it, but by the end of this conversation, he's like, oh, wow, I actually care.
Exactly. And I think, again, we see what overall gets accomplished. Jeff is growing. Jeff is growing every episode, willing to put himself out there more, different things like that. And he realizes it's cool to care. And then we go back to the B story of they go to the pop and lock-a-thon.
Chang's been popping and locking for
like
the
5
first
hours.
5 hours
Yeah.
just by himself, waiting for them all to show up, and he's like,
what could
he's
be
totally
motivate him to
miserable.
go through this?
Yeah, and he's thinking of the study group the entire time to
With
get
Ave
him through.
Maria in the background.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
So he's pushing himself to do this, and then the study group finally shows up, and they can help him and take over and pop and lock. And Troy starts going, but he says his heart's not really in it.
When it shows.
Exactly, and he's not doing very good, and Chang collapses on the floor because
Yeah.
he's just passed out.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Winger shows up and saves the day.
Yeah.
He basically shows up and he's like, I'm realizing, I want to hang out with people in my spare time that are, it's so cool that they care. And I think it's actually really, really sweet.
Yeah.
Very sweet.
So then they all go, they hug Jeff, and
Yeah.
then of course they get disqualified from the pop and lock-a-thon.
Because caring's more important than winning.
Except not to Chang, who is passed out
It's
on
like-
the floor.
This sets up a huge story that gets followed all the way through is Chang's mental health demise, and this
Yep.
is really the thing that sets him off.
Mhm.
Because that's the thing. What got him through 5 hours of popping and locking was the idea of being in the study group, and they take that away from him.
Yep.
Quick.
So the next one, the psychology of letting go. This is a really, really fun one. I'll let Ashley take this one over.
The A story for this one would be Jeff dealing with his issues, going and visiting the nurse and finding out that he has high cholesterol.
But that's
And
it.
Yeah, that's it. It's not that big of a deal.
Still
but
in
it's
perfect
Jeff,
health.
while also trying to disprove Pierce's religion. So
Yeah.
it's this whole thing with Jeff,
That
and then we have
unfolds.
like a really fun girl storyline with Britta, Annie, and Shirley, and then we have Abed, who has a really fun background scene.
Exactly.
I think this does a really good job at kind of resolving the tension between Annie and Britta that they hadn't really resolved themselves at the end of season 1 and everything going on with Jeff. So, like, they're very much going at each other for, like, personal things and, like, the typical girl stuff they're always jealous about. But I think it's also their way of dealing at the end when they kind of resolve everything. I was trying to do this to seem cool to you. I only kiss Jeff because I hate myself. And it's just like, why do we even care? Like, we should just be helping each other. So it's a really great way to resolve all of their issues and then set them up to just, like, get closer and just be able to be friends throughout the rest of the season. And Shirley just kind of is a outsider looking in on all of that and then kind of pushing it to explode and then watching the resolution.
She instigates it.
Oh, she totally does. Yeah, she definitely eggs both of them on, which I think is hilarious because they don't invite her and she's salty about it.
She's
but
salty? She's
she
drama
makes the
queen.
most of her
And
situation.
she keeps mentioning that too. Like one of the favorite things she says, she was like, "Oh, what are you guys doing? Just the two of you."
Exactly.
And then when she's mentioning it to Jeff, she's like, "Oh, they've paired off."
Yeah.
Like she's very much salty that she wasn't invited, and she's like, "Oh, well, so for this reason, I'm gonna stir the shit pot."
Exactly. That's what I'm gonna do.
Because that's what Shirley does.
Yeah.
It ends up, evolving into this whole resolution between the two of them, which I think is really nice, and it ends in a great oil fight that I'm sure lots of people appreciate.
Exactly, which lends to the whole overall, or like the story that's going on between Anna and Britta. So so it's like it starts off, Troy finds Pierce's mom dead.
Yes.
And then one thing I really
She
like.
crawled outside to die like a cat.
That one was really good. Pierce isn't upset about his mom's death at all.
Yeah.
Then this is where we get the introduction to his laser lotus theology.
Neo-Buddhism religion.
Yep. He doesn't believe his mom is dead. Only her organic body has lived its capacity.
Yes. And I think this is a great way to show that it kind of establishes Pierce as sort of like outsiderness, and that just further sets up even more stuff to come with Pierce.
Oh my God.
Of the season.
That's such a good point. You're right. It's the first thing that makes him an outsider because everybody's like, Shirley's
like a cult.
Exactly. It's like Shirley has her religion and like Troy is a Jehovah's Witness, but like we can all agree that like Pierce's is the weirdest.
Exactly.
And the group really, really like attaches to that. Professor Duncan starts subbing anthropology because he gets his restraining order against Chang.
Yep.
And uses
hilarity
the force
ensues.
field.
Yep.
Turns into a force field, yeah.
And it's actually through Duncan that Jeff realizes, he's having the whole conversation about his weight and what that means. And Duncan's actually like, you're actually, trying to attack Pierce's God because your God, which was your health, is dead, whatever.
Yeah.
And then Jeff has a whole moment where he's like, wow, now I can really roll up my sleeves and get into
Get
doing
this
that.
shit
And
done.
there's to like destroying Pierce's God and his religion.
He basically shouts, "There is no God."
Yes.
Like Duncan very astutely points out, he's been worshiping himself, and even that
This
temple's
entire
got
time.
to go.
Yeah.
This drama's going on. Britta confronts Annie about her act. So while they're working on the whole oil fundraiser and everything, but it causes a lot of tension between them because it brings up Britta's insecurities, really.
Oh, yeah, and one's for Annie, too. They're both jealous of each other for things that they feel like they don't have, and I feel like that's where jealousy comes,
Yeah,
they
it
compete
really
with
comes
each other
from.
It's
over
a
the same
personal thing
meat.
that you need to deal with. It's not anything that's wrong
Anybody
with
else's
someone else.
problem. You're actually so right. And so that's what Britta literally tells her. She's like, that they have a sock at home with your name on it. And then Annie vehemently denies this, and she's like, that's just who I am. And one of my favorite jokes is, and if a guy wants to make a puppet of me, that's hardly your concern.
Yeah.
Again, again, just kind of reinforcing Annie is really, really innocent. And this very much is Britta putting this on Annie.
Yeah.
Maybe Annie's upping it a little bit, but very much this is just who Annie is, and Britta's like projecting that on her.
Jeff ends up tricking Pierce. He says he's going to take Troy and him out for ice cream to this really good place that's downtown, so it's a little further, but he's actually going to... Yeah, so he's actually going to take Pierce to see his mom's dead body. And on their car ride, Pierce ends up finding this CD that his mom made for him with, like, her last dying breath. Yep. So they put it in and listen to it, and it's this whole nice speech from Pierce's mom saying, like, I'm not in your stupid Energon pod. I've died. I've moved on because that's what life is about, and that's what makes life so beautiful. Exactly. It's this whole really nice speech. Pierce takes out the CD and says that woman's really off her rocker.
Yep.
And fully still believes in his crazy religion, and Jeff and Troy are both just like, you seriously still believe that she's in that lava lamp and that's your mom? And Pierce is like, well, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
This whole episode's about that, because it's like it's Jeff putting his hang-ups on Pierce and how he's dealing with death, and then it's also Annie and Britta putting their insecurities on each other, which I think that's also really fun because, like I said, it's everybody dealing with how they project their hang-ups on each other.
Yeah.
So that's episode 3, and I'm going to also make Ashley talk about episode 4.
Oh my gosh.
For reasons, because I think this is one of your favorite episodes, right?
Basic Rocket Science, which also directed by Russo. So the first 4 episodes are directed by both the Russo brothers. I think that's awesome.
And there's definitely a cinematic quality to them, so that
especially
makes
to
a lot
this
of sense.
one. Yeah, this one's definitely like an homage to those, like to space movies. It's totally hilarious.
It's
Armageddon.
It's a huge homage to Armageddon.
And I think we discussed with this one, there's not really like an A and B story because both of the storylines directly affect each other. So it's like Stone says, like A1 and A2. Yeah. So for this one, the dean wants to best city college and get their space
orbital
like
launch
program.
Simulator.
Get their orbital launch simulator going the weekend before theirs so that they can seem better than City College.
It's Saturday. It launches Monday.
Because they're afraid of losing their funding and becoming a giant parking lot.
CCC. Parking Lot West.
So the dean calls the board together. They find this old KFC like space simulator vehicle that they have. Yeah, from a museum, like from the 70s or 80s. And it's just awful looking. Needs some work on it, and he has just the crew to fix it together. Yep. And he calls in the study group to atone for their submission into the school flag contest, where we get Greendale's like actual school flag is created.
The birth of the anus flag.
Yeah. Yep. E pluribus anus.
Yeah.
The crossroads of
ideas. He's like, I now know this isn't the crossroads of ideas. I now know it's a butt.
And it is now their school flag forever.
For some reason.
So he gets the study group, and it's their job to clean up this vehicle and get it ready in time for the space simulator, launch over the weekend. But then Troy and Abed, immediately after the dean leaves, get into the spaceship, and antics ensue. And basically the group gets trapped inside of this vehicle as it's getting towed. Yep. And Abed left to go get appropriate clothing for the occasion.
He wasn't dressed up enough.
So he leaves to get that. So Abed is left.
Abed has a special connection with this vehicle. He studied it a lot when he was a kid and all these different things. Always wanted to be in it. And his dad, didn't let him whatever. Yeah. And so for him, he was like, this was a huge moment for him. So he leaves to go get changed. And like Ashley said, they get towed away.
And it's actually this really funny moment because he comes out and sees that the KFC RV is gone, and he looks around for it, and then he actually looks up into the sky to see
maybe?
If just maybe. Yeah. And it's really sweet. So then, the whole rest of the episode is the study group trapped inside this RV, and they have to try to find a way back to Greendale with the dean and Abed pairing up to try to bring them back as well, or to find out where they are, because they don't even know where they are at this point. Their phones don't have signals.
Mission control thing.
Yep, and Pierce ends up going crazy because they find out he's claustrophobic. Yeah. And they lock him in a cage, and I think this is really interesting. Like I was saying on the last episode, the group literally isolates Pierce once again, and he is an outsider viewing all of the antics ensuing between everyone else and not really being a part of that. Troy and Jeff battle for leadership this episode a lot, which is really interesting to see coming from last season where Troy was the underdog, just being silly, having fun. Now he's challenging Jeff, and he's trying to...
for authority.
Exactly, and trying to step up and I think find himself and find his voice and figure out who he is. And, he has to do that by trying to take charge, and Jeff doesn't like when he's not in charge.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of the conflict comes from this episode too, I think.
Yeah.
And one of the big conflicts that's going on the whole time is they're all accusing Annie of ratting them out.
Yep.
The whole reason that they have to show up to even clean the RV is because someone ratted them out.
That they're the ones who drew that flag.
Yeah, because the design was submitted anonymously, so someone had to have ratted them out. The whole simulation launches. They get locked inside this vehicle, and Abed, being, again, back to the Armageddon homage, is at home with the dean, and he's like, that was supposed to be me. I'm the only one who knows how to bring her back home. So basically, the dean employs the help of Abed to help bring them back. And that's where this kind of slight B story happens between the dean and Abed. So he's given the mission of helping them complete the simulation, so the window will open, they can figure out where they are, and hopefully get back in time for the launch.
Yep.
There are also a lot of good jokes in this one, because this is one where, like, when Abed and the dean are working together, he brings out the maps.
Yes.
And then Abed notices he's circled public restrooms and truck stops complete with star ratings.
Yeah.
During the time that all this conflict is happening in the KFC mobile, Annie admits to trying to transfer to City College.
Yes.
She is directly involved with getting them towed, but still won't admit to ratting on them about the flag.
The study group in the RV kind of deals with their tension again. It's revealed that Annie wasn't the one who told the dean about the flag. It was actually Jeff, because he was upset that he was upset that he didn't see that it was very clearly an anus. So then everyone kind of atones, and Pierce says he's calmed down, he's ready to be let out. They let him out, and he goes to attack the computer screen in the RV.
Hears talking to him.
Who's been taunting him this whole time, and ends up punching a hole through the RV so that they're able to get someone to get to the steering wheel to drive the car, to drive them back.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite little bits in this episode, Jeff says, "Who's feeling skinny?" And then Annie and Troy both raise their hands. And they make it back to the school in time for the launch as City College. The dean from City College is there taunting our dean.
Yes, exactly, Dean Sprague. And that's the thing, it's complete with a reckless, dramatic landing.
Oh, yeah.
It's in slow-mo, it is so homage heavy. It's so, the music and everything. And then the RV basically sets itself on fire.
Yeah, it explodes. It does.
It just reestablishes that Pierce is an outsider. Pierce is very much an antagonist in this episode, which is a theme that gets carried on throughout the rest of the season. And what it accomplishes, it's like Jeff gives Troy the space to have some leadership, to be seen as somewhat of an equal, and that gets carried on through. Episode 5.
Messianic Myths and Ancient Peoples.
Shirley and Abed butt heads over religion.
Yep.
Pierce rebelling against his study group.
Yep, with the hipsters.
Yeah,
right.
The hipsters. All right.
So it starts with everyone in anthropology, because Professor Duncan has basically dropped all airs, and he says that, we're not going to learn anything. This is just a joke class. I'm not going to teach it. I don't know anthropology. I think it's a joke anyway.
Like Stone said, Duncan's given up all pretext that he's trying to teach a class. They're watching viral videos. Shirley wants to watch a video about God. She's basically upset that her faith isn't as popular as fart videos. So Shirley goes to her church. They basically say that they're willing to fund a viral video with a Christian message. She enlists the help of Abed. And at first he says no, and Shirley kind of gives up. Meanwhile, all of this is happening in the background. Pierce is starting to clash with the group. So he goes to lunch. He wants to eat a plate full of mac and cheese. And Abed basically has Britta come in and be like, hey, you need to tell him what to be eating.
Yeah, Jeff Britta mommy daddy vibes are turned up a million
super
percent.
hard in
we
this
even see
one,
Jeff
right?
doing the 1950s, reading the
paper.
newspaper. And in some of the conversations, hey, no religious talk. And just stuff like that.
I
love being really daddy vibes.
They
or both
go
of them.
hard for it.
Very
They
parental
really
vibes.
do. They go really, really hard for it. And that's
true.
the thing.
That's what they are.
Britta literally shows up and she's like, well, you have to have some broccoli, they lay into it really, really hard. Jeff doesn't want that role, and I think this is a big theme that's going throughout the episode is Jeff is very much always reluctantly takes the power. It's something that he talks about in Paintball later on in the series, in the season. But basically, he's always reluctant to accept the roles put upon him because he just wants to be cool, fun,
and skate by.
Exactly, not have to put in that much effort. And of course, these people always just make him try much harder than he wants to. Pierce sees that Leonard steals cookies and likes that he's kind of a badass. He follows him back to his group, and then that's where he's introduced to the hipsters, this older crowd of bad behaving older people,
bad apples
that are delinquents, exactly, and then kind of take advantage of the fact that they're senior citizens and they can kind of get away with more. Abed basically finds Shirley later on in the episode and tells her that he read the New Testament, and he starts comparing Jesus to E.T., Edward Scissorhands, and Marty McFly combined. And he agrees to make the viral video. I think it's funny and it's worth mentioning. It's Abed agrees to do it because, again, he sees it for the cinematic value and not anything for what Shirley wants it to be, which is why conflict ensues off the bat. In typical Abed fashion, he makes the movie about a filmmaker exploring the life of Jesus. He's trying to find God with his camera. All the filmmakers are Jesus, and all their cameras are God.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack, and that's how the whole episode feels.
The word meta is dropped many times.
Many times. So this is basically Abed's first exploration into making movies. He wants to make a film about God. Mm-hmm. Shirley doesn't like it at all. Abed says that's how people reacted to Jesus. So this kind of just further feeds into his like belief that this is what he's supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
She tries Shirley tries to call off the movie, but everybody on campus is like eating his shit up.
Oh yeah, and like Abed's kind of like indulging in like this like the narrator or like the person who's like controlling the camera is like God, and like because honestly, whole first season up to this point, he's kind of had that role, so I feel like it kind of like fluffs him up. He's like, no, I think I'm kind of, this is the movie I'm meant to make.
Of our life.
Yeah, this is going to do it. And he gets really high on himself, and luckily.
And literally the chanting starts in the background. We get,
Abed!
And that starts going throughout the whole fucking episode. Meanwhile, Pierce starts hanging with the older crowd.
Right.
He's getting himself into a lot of problems and a lot of antics there. They're like, drinking and playing poker in a closet they call the Dean of Fruit, which sets up a recurring joke because Leonard calls the Dean of Fruit, and he literally says, he literally responds, unacceptable, none of your business, and barely the whole truth.
Yeah.
And I know I'm kind of laying into this one a lot, but there are a lot of things that are set up here that, again, get followed through throughout the rest of the series. Shirley, like Stone mentioned earlier when we were talking about it, she tries to make her own Christian viral video, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
She has Britta and Troy doing their awkward dance.
Yeah.
They abandon it because they don't believe in it either way. They support Abed. They love all the bullshit Abed's doing. Shirley shows up in the quad and basically is like, you're being blasphemous, and Abed just basically goes, I forgive her, which is a giant mic drop. Everybody loses their shit because they're like, you drew the most awesome Jesus card that you could pull. Ever. You just forgave her. Mm-hmm. And everybody's saying that she's a real life Pharisee. She's a heretic. They're watching the persecution of Jesus right before their eyes.
Oh
it's fucking ridiculous. Mommy daddy vibes for Britta are going super hard in this. Yeah. They're trying to parent Pierce. Pierce is just rebelling like a child. Mm-mm. Basically, it culminates in Pierce and the hipsters stealing the Dean's car and realizing that, like, when the guy who was driving the car has, like, basically, like, an Alzheimer's episode. Exactly, a dementia attack where he forgets everything, including how to drive. Everybody bails on him. Yeah. And for me, this is a big moment for Pierce because he's like, were those guys our friends? And Pierce tells this guy, no, they're not. Because Pierce knows what it's like to have real friends, and his friends, the study group, wouldn't do that.
Yeah, they're different.
They
care.
In fact,
they'd be there.
Jeff ends up showing up for him after they all get caught for this anyway.
Yep. Exactly, and as much, again, as Jeff tries to push off the responsibility of being the dad and having to care about people, the woman who's working the front desk is like, yeah, no one shows up for Leonard anymore. Why do you think he acts that way? And it's a big reason why Jeff tries to keep his heart open because he sees what happens when you're shut out and you have no one who cares about you and no one to care about.
Yeah.
Pierce kind of still rebels and slams on the table. So it's like, even though Jeff is showing up, you're still rebelling and you're not accepting that help. You're still kind of being a dick, Pierce.
Because that's who Pierce is, and that's basically... That theme is what follows throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, he's a
and it only gets
child.
Played on more,
Even
I feel
more,
like.
Exactly, gets brought up more.
And now we get back to the Abed story. He watches his film all the way through, and he realizes it's a giant fucking turd.
My God.
It's a piece of shit. And we have this really sweet moment where Shirley sees that she can step in, and it's cute because Abed's asking for help from God, essentially, and a God that he's not even quite sure that he fully believes in. Mm-hmm. He believes in the context of this movie. Yeah. And so he asks for help. He realizes he's not going to get it from God. He goes back to deal with the consequences of his actions, and Shirley steps in. So she shows up with a baseball bat, and she basically crushes the set. She destroys all the tapes, the camera, the everything. And I really like it because it wraps it up at the end. Abed sits with Shirley, and he's like, you heard me praying. One thing I like is she's humble enough to not be like, I need all this credit.
She literally
blame
says,
the credit,
you humble me.
Exactly.
They say that to each other, and I think that's one of the sweetest things that both of those people who are both banging so hard for what they were going for to tell each other, you've humbled me in this like amount of time. Like I see things differently. I think that is so sweet to like wrap that up on.
100%, and that they both see each other in a new way. So,
exactly.
And Abed, without being asked, creates the viral video that she wanted for her church.
Very discreet.
It is, exactly, and it just shows up. He's like, Duncan shows up in class. Abed sent me a new viral video link. They actually wrap it up really nicely that, like, that these characters can really see each other in a new way and can, like, respect each other.
Yeah.
I really, really, really liked it.
Yeah.
I think this takes us into our next episode, which is season 2, episode 6, Epidemiology. There we go. And
it's about epidemics.
Collectively, all one of our favorite episodes.
Oh, yeah.
A story, zombie food poisoning, definitely
Yes.
going on. Smaller B story happening among everything, but still very important. The conflict a little bit going on between Troy and Abed's costume debacle.
Yeah.
Yes.
So go ahead, take it away.
Okay, so it starts with, we get a really cool intro, like, narration by George Takei for, like, no reason, but it's super fun, and it, like, fits the Halloween theme. And then we get straight into it, and it's all Abbott themed.
They basically all meet up around the punch cooler.
Yeah.
Pierce is Captain Kirk, Jeff is David Beckham, and the Dean is Lady Gaga.
And Pierce does not look good. He looks like all bloated, and they joke about it.
After he's been eating all of this taco meat.
Right, which like it basically comes out that like Jeff's like, it's Army surplus ration that the Dean got for super cheap at the Army surplus store, and he fed it as taco meat. We see Rick come back. Jeff cannot stand it, and Rick is kind of like addressing how there's kind of like a sickness going around the party.
Yeah, you're right. Pierce starts getting sick from the taco meat.
Right.
We meet Troy and Abed. Troy and Abed show up to the party.
And they're dressed up as a really great group costume from Aliens, where Troy is dressed up as Ripley in the power loader armor, and Abed is dressed up as one of the xenomorph aliens.
Yeah.
Jeff's like, because you remind them of like little kids at Comic-Con. That's
you're
why.
like nerds.
Yeah, and it's like, and he's dressed up as David Beckham, and Britt even calls out, I was like, I wonder how much effort you put in to be like accidentally attractive.
Yeah. One thing I like is, again, it's the continuation
Running
of the
gag.
unsexy costumes.
Yep, she
Last
refuses
year
every
she
time.
was, a squirrel. This year, now she's a T-Rex.
And she can't even move her arms.
Jeff has to basically baby bird her drinks. It's like that ridiculous. So at this point, more and more people are getting sick from the food, and it's getting serious.
Yes.
Troy changes his costume to go to shirtless Dracula.
Yep.
He's like, it doesn't matter which Dracula I am. I'm just a Dracula.
Yeah.
So he abandons Abed, which feeds into the B story of like the conflict between their costumes going on.
There we go.
All hell breaks loose, and what's playing in the background is Dancing Queen.
There we go.
Yep, and it's like a whole zombie attack sequence of
Zombie
everyone
attack!
running and screaming while Dancing Queen by ABBA is playing in the background. So the Dean traps the entire school
in the library.
Yeah, they lock them all in, and everyone has to fend for themselves and go through this whole zombie attack. And the study group makes it to their study room and secures themselves with Rich,
in there.
who is still there.
Yeah.
So then we learn Rich and Britta were both bit.
Yeah, because they thought they were special, and then they started going crazy on the group. Annie at this point gets pulled out through by a
Chang
window.
Throws his fucking skate through the window like a dumbass, trying to throw it at Britta and Rich.
Yeah. They run out. They're trying to group through. Shirley falls. She gets pulled into the bathroom with Chang, where that's its own side story we'll get to. Really, the group that's left is Jeff, Abed, and Troy. They run. They find another room, and they escape for the moment. They realize that they need to turn down the air conditioning unit because Rick said everyone's fever is going to get super bad because it's like a rabies thing. Abed is like, we need to turn down the air conditioning so we can save everybody.
Meanwhile, while Chang and Shirley are in the bathrooms hiding together, they have a slightly intimate moment where they connect and they think they're going to die, so they fuck.
Yeah.
I mean,
like,
I guess
why not
that's
one
what
last
a lot
time?
of people would do.
Yeah. Troy and Abed they see a way out through a door, and Troy and Abed are like, we can go through there and fix the AC. And Jeff's like, I don't know, we can just go through that door. And Abed just calls him out, and it's just like he doesn't want to get his clothes dirty. Troy and Abed are like, come on. Jeff is like, the clothes make the man. And in that moment of his ego, like reaching the maximum, zombies come in and they get...
Rich gets him.
Yeah, Rich gets him wearing his nice jacket! And it's just a little bit of poetic justice. And then we lose Jeff, and it's just Troy and Abed.
And Abed helps Troy basically escape. And it's also another homage. I love it. Troy tells Abed, I love you. And right before he gets eaten by the zombies, he goes,
Star Wars is it.
Yeah. I know.
Yep.
It's beautiful. And Troy is the one who,
Troy
even though everyone forgets, Troy has a heart of gold and ends up saving everyone. And ends up taking on that leadership role. He's going to win by being a nerd.
And he goes,
and then,
better have a plan B!
The Dean goes,
And then as Mamma Mia is playing, Troy is fighting his way through zombies back in his Ripley suit.
Yeah, power suit.
Right.
Yep.
And it's this badass scene, and the zombies start attacking him, and his suit doesn't work, and it's just a disaster.
And he realizes it's a dumb idea.
Exactly. So he has to try to fight through all these zombies, make it to the thermostat. He makes it there, but right before he does, he runs into Abed, and he tries to remind tries to remind Abed that we're friends. And then Abed looks at him and then bites the shit out of him. And then Shirley and Britta show up and everyone's biting him. And then Troy says one of my favorite lines where he goes, you guys did what zombies did.
Okay.
Like, congratulations. And then with his last, human breath, he turns the thermostat down and saves the day as Fernando comes over to play us out.
The temperature starts to drop and you see everybody acting how they would in their normal habitats, like as zombies. But it's like Annie's reading a book, Jeff is texting, and then as everything starts to get back to normal, everybody like comes out of it basically. Like you said, the military shows up and as the dean says, 6 hours on the dot. And they basically realize, first they try to just kill the dean, thinking he's the only witness, but then everybody's there. And so they basically just decide to flash everybody's memory, and they sell a story that the government...
Yeah, they Men in Black them.
Yeah, they Men in Black them. They basically just say, like, the whole school was mass roofied at the dam.
Yeah, beautiful.
And it ends with the closing again from George Takei, who gives Kevin some...
a sick voicemail.
Message,
And then we also get the end tag where Chang leaves a voicemail for Troy saying that he and Shirley totally did it, which is going to end up being important in a couple episodes.
Yep.
You hear Shirley's voice, and then Troy's like, why did he call me?
And then,
Black.
And then it ends, exactly, because again, no one remembers what actually happens on the night of the Halloween party. Okay, so that takes us into episode 7, Aerodynamics of Gender.
I don't know, what would be the A and the B?
A and B stories.
Ooh, they both take up like 50% time, too.
I think I put the girls and Abed as my A story.
Because
I love that whole one. But then the B story would be Jeff, Troy, and Pierce.
Yes.
Secret trampoline.
Exactly, yeah. So in this episode, Shirley, Britta, and Annie join or start taking a women's studies class, study of women in like modern media, and Abed wants to join in to find out more about the girls, which is really sweet.
Yeah.
And then Jeff and Troy are kind of bonding over, playing basketball and all of this typical like manly stuff, and Pierce is feeling very left out, and instead of just communicating that, he tries to force his way into their fun and just kind of make an ass out of himself and just be really obnoxious.
He's always one step behind everyone else. I like that this is another one where like Troy and Jeff are kind of butting antlers, and Jeff is like, he gets beat and he's like, no, we'll do it again, and then he gets beat again, and he like punts the basketball like hundreds of feet away, and then he says he's proud of being a soy loser because he won't ever not be himself, even when he sounds kind of like an idiot and an ass.
Yeah, I'm proud of it. Yeah,
proud of it. It's like, what, dude? Seriously? Can't you just say you're sorry? It's a game with your friends.
Exactly. And through him punting that basketball, Troy goes to find it and ends up finding a secret garden with a trampoline.
Idyllic. Miranda said soft focus on everything.
Yeah,
it's like midsummer. It's so beautiful.
Bright and exuberant. Like, it's like a totally different world.
It's this really, really hilarious story, and this trampoline sort of resembles, I guess, peace for Jeff and Troy, once they discover it for whatever reason. Bouncing on it, what does Troy say?
Or is it Josh that says it's like bouncing on the knee of a goddess?
Thank you. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Oh, they meet this like gardener who like comes out of nowhere and kind of confronts him. Is like, how'd you find this place? Like he's like the keeper and guardian of this place.
Of this trampoline.
Free of darkness.
And so Jeff and Troy are...
They're not having this conflict anymore.
It really, really gets to Pierce. And he's going to be so extra that he ends up finding the secret garden with his dragon flyer, which is this like a drone video camera thing. And he finds the secret garden.
Demands access to it. Or he's going to out it.
I think it's really telling that, like, obviously Pierce just wants to be included. He wants to be involved in what's going on, and he can't be like Abed and just be one of the girls and go off on that story. So he's got to be with Jeff and Troy, and they very clearly are doing things that he can't keep up with, and he can't handle that, so he pushes and pushes, ends up jumping on the trampoline, demands to be double bounced by Troy, which is not allowed.
One of the only 2 rules that they have here.
And I like that because it promotes like that Troy and Jeff literally can't compete. One at a time, take your time, and they don't worry about it. It's like, okay, then you're done.
We each get our time, exactly. There's no one's better than the other one. We're both just bouncing.
It's this idyllic place where that can exist, right? Where like Jeff is bouncing on the trampoline. He's like, oh, I've been up here for 30 seconds. And they're like, what are you talking about, Jeff? You've been up there for an hour. Meanwhile, like you said, Pierce can't run off and be one of the girls like Abed does.
Yeah.
And that's the whole storyline he runs off with is like, oh, I actually want to understand you guys a little bit more. Women's studies sounds interesting because it's women's like portrayal in film.
And he got rejected by the masculinity of Troy and Jeff because he wanted to come in and play. He was a part of the boys' gang, and then they're like, no. And the competitors actually rejected Abed. He's like, well, maybe I should see what the other side of the things like and be more sensitive.
Really cool guest star this episode with the girls' storyline, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
I love that let's talk about it in modern media, and then like they do this whole storyline with a stereotypical like bitchy bully girl played by Hilary Duff, which is
like Lizzie McGuire.
The bully has grown.
Exactly. I didn't know Lizzie Maguire was this mean. How dare you?
And that's the thing. And I kind of like how they set it up because at first, like, the girls are kind of being mean to Abed because they don't want to sit with him. They're kind of mad that he's crashing their, like, women's studies class, their girl thing, and so they kind of ditch him at first. Yeah, and then when they try to go and sit at the front and sit away from him, they get their shit rocked by Hilary Duff, who's like, oh no, that's where we're sitting.
Yeah.
Which one of my favorite jokes is Shirley's like, of course her name is Megan. Are we stocking up for a bitch sergeant?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Which Stone vehemently believes is a Drake and Josh, like.
Yes, because Yvette Nicole Brown was on Drake and Josh as the manager, and Megan was a rotten bitch on Drake and Josh. So yeah, I think that's a little fun camp. Or I'm just filling with my brain. It's my fan and I like it.
You're right there. I love that.
But then we learned that Abed is great at being one of the mean girls.
He's hypercritical.
Exactly.
And hyper observational. So like he's catching things like that the bitchy girls aren't even like that they take a second to. He's already like, I've got 5 things that's wrong with you.
Abed's like a RoboCop.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah,
like,
and those are like perfect ones from the movie RoboCop screens. Yeah.
Break down. So like he basically goes to talk shit to Megan. When he starts being mean to the mean girls, his RoboCop vision activates. Yeah. And all of this information is on the screen. Yes. And I don't know if people who've watched the show have like really like paused it and seen what it says.
And looked at it.
Because it looks just like the movie RoboCop, and that's kind of what that's obviously what it's mirroring. But like it's built in this universe, and it's 100% tied to this. Yeah. What are some of the things that you caught?
Oh, I loved that he had all of the Christmas stuff, like under memos on one side of the screen at one point. He had, like, get Rudolph for Christmas, confirm mom, and then make a blanket for it was all under his memos.
Right, which are all future episodes.
Those are all future episodes we revisit 100%.
Yeah. And then it keeps you up to date on what's going on with Jeff and Troy. They're, like, bonding or they're doing something, and it confuses and frustrates Pierce.
Yeah. When they're using him, it's what activates his RoboCop vision, and it brings up that joke that we've talked about before where Britt is so dumb and vapid, and again it introduces that thing that kind of gets carried through. God, yes. That it's like he's like, oh, like RoboCop, and then Britta goes, yeah, and she's a bad rowboat, sink her. Yeah. Like Britta doesn't even know what RoboCop is. Like, again, we all talked about how like there are a lot of movies you haven't seen. You know what RoboCop is. At least you understand what's going on. Yeah. So when this RoboCop vision activates, we learn all of this stuff. All of a sudden we have projections of like the girls' cycles coming up, and we're like, what the fuck is that?
Whoa, which will come into play later.
He has bitch ratings full with power levels. My favorite is like you said, the current synopsis, like the first ones that we get is Britta, Shirley, and Annie make Abed into one of the girls with 0 repercussions. Yeah. When he goes to that later and the girls start getting drunk on their power, it changes to it totally backfires. Right. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So I think that's really fun because I think for all of us, like, I don't think I caught all of the stuff on the screen until maybe the third time I watched this episode. Yeah, no. It's so good. And one thing that I appreciate is everything kind of culminates. It's like Pierce ruins the trampoline for the guys, right? And then gets launched out. Yes. Basically what happens is kind of the opposite side of it with like the girls have been using Abed. Now Abed flips that on its head and is like, well, actually you guys are being bitches. And now I'm going to tear your shit apart. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, basically Abed's like, well, if I'm studying my bitch parameters, then you guys are falling squarely in it. And then they like take it too far, and Abed takes it too literally, and he decides that everyone's a bitch, and then he just goes rampant and basically destroys the whole school.
Yeah, and he has to end up like dealing with all of those repercussions and actually going to Megan and giving her what he calls destruct codes so that he can restore the balance because he realized that he's just been a monster and he's made everyone feel horrible. And he also calls the girls out and tells the girls that they were being bitches too. So they learned their lesson. They were. They realized they were being too much and that they pushed Abed to this point and that everyone just needs to try to get along.
Yeah, and I like it because then his RoboCop vision is actually destroyed. And Megan actually thanks him. She's like,
there's actually a moment of like humanity and like them being humble between each other. Like, thank you.
And then on the other side of it, how does everything get wrapped up with the trampoline?
Pierce ruined everything yet again, being selfish.
Yep, and trying to involve himself in what's going on with everyone else. He further alienates himself from the group and makes himself even more of an outsider. Yeah. Gets himself injured and starts taking painkillers, which very quickly end up becoming a problem for him.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And the end scene in this one is Troy and Abed in the morning. Episode 2. So we get Troy and Abed the first time in season 1. Mm-hmm. We get Troy and Abed in the morning with Starburns as the guest. Yep. And takes us into cooperative calligraphy, a classic episode.
Yes. The bottle episode. Directed by Joe Russo.
Oh, another one. Okay.
Russo, bro.
The Russos are on all of like the bangers this season. I feel like so far.
Yeah. It shows. Maybe they're pretty good at what they do. Who knows?
The bottle episode.
Yeah.
Annie's missing her purple pen.
Yes.
The group is working on a diorama in the anthropology class. And the dean comes by to invite everybody to a puppy parade that's happening on campus. But before they can leave, Annie is adamant on finding her purple pen
because she's lost like 3 or 4 of them.
She's lost,
she's lost enough for it to be too much. For
it's
Annie
a thing
Anderson.
now. Someone's taking it from her.
Yeah, like you said. So everyone wants to go to this puppy parade. They finished up their diorama. They're all feeling good about it, and Annie won't let anyone leave until she finds her pen.
Screams in rage into the intro credits because she's like, "No, we're not playing this game anymore."
Yeah.
We get a glimpse at how crazy Annie can actually be. She's also so mean. She says, accidents don't just happen over and over again. This isn't budget daycare.
It's like, ooh.
Ooh, she's a savage, exactly. And it establishes a whole thing of it's a principle, not a pen.
Exactly.
And that
she's
is why this whole thing happens.
And needs retribution.
She feels disrespected.
Yep.
She feels like people don't respect her things, that they don't respect her as a person.
She's a little kid.
And now this has been the final straw.
Yep, this is it.
Britta tries to leave, and that's basically the domino that sets everything off. And Annie's like, if the fits, accuses Britta, which sets off the domino effect of they search Britta's bag. Britta's just losing her fucking mind. She lays out all of her stuff and is laid bare in front of everybody. They make fun of the fact that she has a bunch of condoms on her. And Shirley condescendingly apologizes to Britta, refuses to empty her bag, and now this is where it turns into she's like, oh, fuck it. You guys all watch me get Guantanamo'd. I'm bringing everybody down with me.
So now 2 people want the bottle episode now.
Yep.
Exactly, and they commit to it. That's the thing. They lock down the room. One of my faves is literally Jeff goes out of his way to tell everybody that he has a date. He literally calls her and he's like, Gwennifer, I'm doing a bottle episode. Yeah. Tell your disappointment to suck it.
And throws his phone.
And we have the third person who seals the bottle episode.
Yep. So they search Troy, they search everyone, they search
Shirley's purse. They get to Abed now. They get to Abed next, and that sets up a joke that we kind of saw in his RoboCop vision. It's like, why was he talking about cycles? Is he and Britta and all the women, right? We don't quite get it. They go through his bag, they go through his notebook, and they realize that Abed has been charting the girls' menstrual cycles, basically.
Yep.
It comes to a culmination of Shirley doesn't want to dump out her bag. They end up forcing her, and it's because she has a pregnancy test. It's revealed she's reconnected with Andre, her ex-husband.
Estranged husband,
Yeah, and now, they've reconnected, and so she thinks she might be pregnant. Abed points out that she wasn't ovulating on Labor Day weekend. She was ovulating on Halloween. Which we all remember, but the study group hasn't yet discovered except Troy.
Yeah.
That
Shane and Shirley totally did it.
That they totally did it. Exactly. Jeff loses it and starts tearing up the room because no matter what, now they've embarrassed everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody's shit's been laid out bare. They still can't find the pen. And then that's when basically Annie gives in. She's like, it's a pen.
Yeah.
He's like, I thought it was about the fucking principal.
Oh, really?
Still, no one's willing to give in.
Yeah.
They basically end up searching each other in their underwear. Abed ruins it by making them separate by gender.
Yeah.
One thing that is pointed out is Troy asks about Jeff's underwear, and then
they look nice.
Britta makes a comment. She's like, don't you wear the striped Beetlejuice numbers? And then Abed's like,
usually.
So
which
again,
is hinting
this
at their
feeds
secret
into
relationship.
Stone's fan fiction that they've all been fucking for so long. But basically, and it's kind of a sweet part of the episode, the resolution is basically that they all decide that they all care about each other enough that they would never let each other go through all of this and not have taken responsibility.
Exactly. And they trust each other enough that no one has to have this pen because if someone did, they would have come forward by now.
I can't believe
that.
Yeah, that you guys would do this to one of us. We love each other too much. And it's understood at this point. It's
and they all agree on that, even though it's they're like, yeah, it's more believable that a ghost took the pen than that we would treat each other like
even though we just went through all of this and dumped our stuff and got naked and did a full strip search. We trust each other.
Exactly. Don't you love that? Through all of that craziness, they're like, oh, but at the end we're family.
Yeah, we love each other.
And at the end of it, we learn that it's actually, again, throwback to season 1, Annie's boobs, who's been living in the vent. The monkey's been stealing all of her purple pens as well as other mementos from the study group, and that's the explanation.
Yep, and that's it. That's who has all of the purple pens.
So episode 9, conspiracy theories and interior design.
A winger one.
Oh, so fun! Another one where it just goes off the deep end with its structure, basically. Story arcs: A, night school. That's a big thing that's explored.
Huge.
B, Troy and Abed's blanket fort.
So it starts with the dean. He's auditing his system. He finds an inconsistency. He goes to Jeff and confronts him as what's this class? Intro to Conspiracy Theories? And he's with Professorson. And Jeff is just hard commits to it. The dean calls him out. Annie is also
prove it.
Prove it. Take me to his thing. They walk to a storage closet. Jeff is like, I love how much of a grifter he is because he's hard committing. It's like what I do with things. It's like, it's going to happen. I'm going to make it materialize. And he does it, and it's a storage closet, and it seems like he comes up and it's like, oh, yep, Jeff, you were lying. Haha, the story's over. And then Professorson just materializes. And he corroborates Jeff's story despite never meeting him. It makes total sense. And then Annie and the dean are kind of like, but yeah, and that's where the start is, because then Annie and Jeff are kind of like, well, we have a real conspiracy about my fake class about conspiracies.
So Jeff admits to never ever having met that guy to Annie.
Exactly, yeah. He basically comes clean and he's just like, yeah, I don't know how the hell that just happened, but he just wants to take the credit and run.
Annie and Jeff, they're starting to investigate the conspiracy theories things. They look up records and they find that the night school class schedule is like made up of joke classes.
One of them's
learning with an exclamation point. It's like, seems crazy. Like, all of this seems fake. So then they decide, all right, well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go to night school and we're going to find this guy. We're going to find Professorson and see who he is.
But then they follow him to his lair and he reveals to them. Basically says that he wished he could go back in time to change his life and not go down this path.
Exactly.
That
and
he
then
goes down.
Jeff kind of like notices something, calls him on it, and then says like, well, maybe the next time you walk us here, you shouldn't walk past the drama department. Professor Sean Garrity. And it reveals that he was working with the dean to try to like mastermind a situation to prove to Jeff like, this is the slippery slope of like your actions. Basically, from there, they decide to set up another situation to get the dean for trying to prove a lesson with him. Because Annie is also frustrated to be like, I can't believe this. It's going all the way to the top, and she's really going with Jeff to try to like get the dean and use Professor Garrity to get him.
Meanwhile, all this is happening. Troy and Abed are building their blanket fort.
Yes.
It expands beyond to just their bedroom.
Yeah, like
it
a
becomes
blanket
like
district.
a dorm-wide thing. It's interconnecting through all of these tunnels and different things like that.
There are different districts, like it's a city.
Exactly. It even comes complete with a Pierce's mom's memorial.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. So callback.
Yeah, they do a whole chase through Troy and Abed's blanket fort, complete with a Latvian Independence Day parade.
Yeah. They had the
with
permits.
They had the permits.
Yes.
Exactly. That's where they find Professorson. They corner him. That's where he takes him to his lair, and then that's when he reveals his whole plan to him.
Along the chase, we see Britta, who was too busy doing adult things in like the new age, like adult sexy district.
Basically, but Sean Garrity explains that like he scraped the dean's car, he owes him an acting, and then that's when shit pops off. Yep. The dean comes in, Annie shoots the professor for being dishonest. The dean shoots Annie because she had a gun. Jeff shoots the dean to deceive Annie, and she admits that she was on the dean's plan,
that they masterminded all of this since the beginning.
Annie goes off on Jeff for kissing her and ditching her. She shoots him. She gets the dean to admit that he's just conspiring with everybody who comes to him to conspire.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, yeah, conspiracy is a conspiracy if you're not faithful or loyal to anybody.
Exactly.
And then that's when he basically admits that he just wants to hang out with them, be
Yeah.
a part of their
He's
antics.
Exactly.
Time travel's really hard to write about. Garrity takes the guns and he's like, all right, fuck it. All of the fake conspiracy things were all done. I'm taking the guns. And then the police show up.
A reoccurring police buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Shoot Garrity in the chest. Everybody freaks the fuck out, especially the dean, because now he has no idea what's reality.
And there's like blood splats and everything, so it looks like the real one.
And they go, and scene. And basically it's a device between the cop and Sean Garrity to basically teach people about using prop guns.
Yeah, it's not okay.
Yeah. And then the dean loses his mind. Was that this hoodie were a time hoodie?
Yeah.
And while hanging out in the blanket fort after the fallout of everything, Jeff commends Annie on her deception.
Yeah.
And basically when the blanket fort goes mainstream, it's written about in the school paper.
Yeah.
Troy and Abed decided to destroy it.
Self-destruct it, yeah. He took the deception like Abed takes the Cougar Town.
Yeah. Oh my god, you're right.
Yeah.
But the character development in this one is fun. It plays more on like builds the relationship between Troy and Abed. And that they build this whole fort and that they can tear it down, and it's always just about them.
Exactly.
Once it becomes bigger than them, it's not fun for them anymore.
Right, because it's for everyone else. It's not for them anymore.
Yeah. I think this is just one that strengthens their relationships. It's another really fun episode. We're introduced into some recurring characters, and so it's a really good episode.
Yeah.
Next is mixology certification. I'm going to let Ashley take this one because she's a bartender.
Yeah.
Troy's 21st birthday, they end up finding out. At first, everyone's celebrating. They think it's his 20th birthday.
His little kitty party.
Yeah, and they want to just kind of get back to studying because they celebrate too many things.
And never studying.
Yep. And then they find out that it's actually his 21st birthday, so they decide, well, we can't just sit here and study. We have to go out and do something now.
Because we can't brush over the fact that Troy thinks that you turn 10 twice because 5th grade is really hard for everybody.
Right? Jeff and Britta are arguing over which bar they want to go to, trying to figure out which one's cooler, Troy realizes in this episode that Jeff and Britta, along the way throughout the episode, don't really have their shit together.
Yeah.
And he
they're
finds
at
that
odds
out
with each other.
he finds that out while they're at the bar. So eventually they get to the bar. They get Annie a fake ID so she can get in too.
Yeah.
And once they eventually get to the bar, Jeff and Britta are acting like they have all of the knowledge. They're telling Troy what drinks to order because they know which ones are cool. Annie's kind of going off of her deep end, pretending to be this other person and loving that she gets to put on this facade.
Yeah.
But Troy, throughout the course of the night, as Jeff and Britta get drunker and drunker, or more drunk.
More drunk.
Which one is it? Yeah.
I don't know.
More drunker, more drunker. There we go.
There
Let's
we
do it
go.
all.
Just combine them.
Yeah.
He realizes Jeff and Britta don't have their shit together at all, and they're the ones he's been going to for advice and looking up to for guidance this whole time. And he's like, they have their shit together less than I do.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this unfolds over the whole episode because basically it starts off with they can't even agree on what bar to take him to.
Yeah.
The whole time they're fighting over which bar is the better bar to take him to.
Yeah.
Britta's saying Jeff's a hipster. Jeff's saying that she's, trying
lame
to be
and not cool.
Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're fighting over that the whole time. They end up agreeing to go to this one bar, and I like it because the drive there, the men and the women are separated. The guys ride with Jeff, the girls ride with Britta, or with Shirley, technically.
Yeah. Shirley is adamant about not going out and drinking, but they convince her.
Yeah. And then they decide they're going to go to a different bar than originally planned, and Shirley's really uncomfortable with that. One of my favorite jokes happens in the guy's car, where it's Troy, Abed, and Jeff. And he hears Jeff say that she just doesn't want to go there because there's plastic menus. And he goes, I'm really glad you told me that because plastic menus seem like a great idea to me for when you spill something on them and your mom says, dang, Troy, you're ruining Fuddruckers for everyone. Like, the first time I heard that, I cried. And that was another one of those moments where I'm like, is Donald Glover improvising?
Yeah.
That sounds very specific, but as Ashley mentions, it's the whole episode of Jeff and Britta going back and forth, fighting over who knows more, only for all of this other hilarity to ensue because everybody gets really sad when they drink.
Right.
Yeah.
Annie's obsessed with being somebody else because she's so unsure of who she is.
Completely different persona. Yeah, the opposite of who she is.
She doesn't want to be herself, so she wants to be somebody else. And then Abed is basically taking advantage of this guy who's very clearly hitting on him.
Yeah.
But he just wants to talk about,
all this fun stuff, the stuff they have in common in Battlestar Galactica and stuff like that.
But Ashley's so right because one of the best parts of the episode is where everybody gets too drunk. Troy realizes before he can even have his first drink that he has to take care of everybody, and he basically ends up corralling everybody and making them go home. Earlier on in the episode, Shirley already leaves because she's kind of embarrassed to find out or everybody finds out that she kind of had a drinking problem and was a regular at the bar, and there are pictures of her posted all throughout the place.
Drunk.
She ends up leaving in embarrassment, but then she has a kind of humanizing moment with Pierce where he's finally able to ask her for help because he's basically stayed outside the bar the entire time.
Yeah.
They end up leaving. Troy ends up taking everybody else home because everybody's too drunk to get home, and in doing that, that's when they drive past the bar district and Britta and Jeff realize that they were talking about the same bar. And it's just a beautiful moment because then it's Troy's getting some of his big things realized. He got to drive Jeff's car, which is what he wanted to do. And then he's outraged to realize that he's been spending the last 2 years thinking that they knew more about life, and they don't. And now people like Troy don't always see that and it's something that this is a theme that's explored all the way through season 6, that it's we look up to adults, but they're just flawed human beings just like us. Just like us,
We're trying to figure it all out.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that, and I think it's a really, really fun way to play it out. And Troy is a good person because then he's just you know what, Dadoy, you're right.
It's fine.
It's fine, I understand, and I guess it was kind of unfair of me to put those expectations on you. Troy takes home Annie. She admits that she pretended to be somebody else because she didn't want to be herself.
Yeah.
And then they have a bonding moment because then Troy basically is you are a person. Don't sell yourself short. You're, a fierce competitor, a sore loser. You care so much about everybody. You expect the best out of people, but the most out of yourself.
And who you are is cool. We respect, and I acknowledge you.
For that.
I see you. Yeah.
Exactly, and I think that that's a really important moment because then I think it lets Annie help her start finding who she is in the scope of I don't need to be all of these other things. I don't need to be somebody else. I can actually be myself, and people really value me for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And their bond gets a little bit stronger. Yeah. So Annie's gets over the course of the first 2 seasons really close to Abed and Troy in a lot of the B stories.
Yeah. It basically ends with Jeff saying that he's a man now.
And he showed that he matured a little bit because Abed was sitting in the car with Jeff and Britta while Annie was talking to Troy. And Jeff and Britta were just started making out because they are mad drunk. They're probably the most drunk of everybody. And he comes in and Jeff and Britta stop. And then Abed, kind of as a little kid, tattles on him. And they were kind of messed up to make out in front of him. But tattles. And Troy's kind of has a moment of don't tattle. We're adults.
Yeah.
Just
You don't need
mind
to
your
be
own
doing
business.
that.
Kind of gets
Yeah.
wrapped up there.
Yep.
And takes us into Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas.
Good one. Great one.
One of my
High
faves.
concept, super
Starts
budget.
off the bat with claymation. We get no explanation of what's going on. We're just taken along for the ride.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I
All of-
love that.
Right? And all of Greendale and its sets and everything are totally reimagined in claymation.
Yep.
So this one I'll just kind of go through because I feel like this one's an actual pretty easy
One to
story arc to kind of follow.
Yeah.
So basically, the dean starts off by saying all the celebrations at the school need to be non-denominational. Everything is super PC. Abed admits he's underwhelmed by everyone's lack of Christmas spirit.
Yep.
He feels that this one should be so special because everything is in claymation, and that's when everybody is at the table and they're like, "What's
going on?"
Jeff's
talking
even
about?
like, let's not bite.
Yeah,
Let's not
but
talk
that's the
about
thing,
it.
and that's the thing. The whole episode is fully realized that it's like this is very much Abed's understanding and like perception of what's going on.
This is what
during
he
this
sees,
day.
Yep.
Literally, from the moment he's woken up, this is what's happening.
Right.
Everyone's worried about him. Britta basically tries to trick him into therapy because he has a whole episode, which is what I love because this episode is fully imagined. Even the opening credit scene is a musical number, complete with original music. Abed dancing on cars, and what's
singing,
fun is like everybody in reality, this is really happening.
Yeah.
Like he really is dancing on cars. He really does get tased by the police, and I love it because it feels like this like imagining of what's going on in Abed's head set in the reality of but this is real life.
It's
like this
happening,
isn't just like
Kind
a
of like
TV
a
show.
stark, morbid reality. He's having a mental breakdown, dancing on cars and like singing, and everyone kind of around him is like, "Oh, what's going on?
Exactly.
It's this bad." They take him straight to Duncan right after
Yeah.
that.
So exactly, and they threaten to basically kick him out of school if he doesn't get help.
Yeah.
Which sets off the whole Duncan wants to help him find the meaning of Christmas so he can address his issues and then also benefit off of it by posting
Writing
it to
a
a bunch
sick
of
article
yeah,
and getting
exactly,
the recognition to
doing
get out of
research
Greendale.
on Abed, basically. So they go to the study room. They do a whole basically claymation, kind of like a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah, exactly.
Episode.
Remember in the Abed doing RoboCop?
Yes.
He said, "Make sure you go rent Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer," which is clearly a reference of like he saw the
movie that they're
claymation
referencing
and
in
he's
this
gonna
one. Exactly. So all the characters transform. Jeff becomes Jeff in the Box. Troy is Troy Soldier.
Yep.
Troy Soldier. Britta
Have a
Bot.
gun?
Pierce
Just jump.
is Teddy Pierce. Annie is Ballerani, and Shirley is Baby Shirley.
Yep.
These are important because this kicks off the whole conflict. Shirley's the first one to get kicked out because she's upset that Abed doesn't respect her enough to not make her a baby in his imaginary therapy wonderland, and then he's like, therapy.
Yeah.
Duncan kicks her out because anybody who's not there to help Abed is out.
Yeah.
Jeff can't help but be sarcastic. He ends up getting beaten by the humbugs. But basically, they all get taken out one by one.
Wonka style with little songs.
Wonka style, complete with exactly exit songs where it's like, this is why they were so horrible, and this is why they are no longer along for the ride.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's a beautiful episode. Everybody who gets a chance to watch it should definitely watch it. We'll kind of just go through the main points of the story. But basically, Abed shares with Troy and Annie later on, which it happens after a really, really sad, beautiful moment between Abed and Britta. Britta tries to keep going along for the ride, and he's like, I'm actually not letting you go along for the ride, not because you don't care about Christmas, but because you tried to trick me into therapy. And sings a song to her that actually brings her to tears, saying that she's programmed badly, doesn't have any faith in herself or her friends. And it's true. She's trying to manipulate this whole situation. So Abed abandons her. He continues this on with Annie and Troy.
Yes. Right.
We learn that Abed's is that he meets with his mom every December 9th to watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and today's December 9th, and she's not there.
Right.
Yes.
And it basically ends
and he's in
with...
denial that it
And he's in
even
denial.
suggests.
No, he won't listen to anybody. And basically it ends with Duncan forcing him to confront his reality. He finds this card in his apartment. Duncan comes back and basically explains, like, the reason you have this whole mental break and you're seeing everything in claymation is because, you know, it's December 9th. Your mom's not coming to visit you. She has a new family. You're a man now, and you need to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so he basically goes catatonic, and it's this really sweet moment when the whole group shows up, and everybody who is ousted from his Christmas journey basically comes together and helps him see that, like, the meaning of Christmas is not everything that we've done over all the past years. It's that it's having people to share it with and create new traditions.
Absolutely, yeah.
The visual realization and the fact that every set, one of the little things is when, like, someone leaves the ice chamber or something, you see, and there's actually like a little shot of like reality where it's the study room. It's the library, and you see like a little library outside. Because like, guess what? It is really only in the study room where we're seeing this like Abed's amazing like imagination.
It's a really high concept episode, and we get
beautiful.
a lot of those throughout the series, and it is really beautiful. Basically, just to quickly touch about like the arcs that we hit, it's like Abed realizes that like his family is what makes the holidays, and choosing to be with them and the traditions that you make.
Yeah.
And it basically goes with they go back to watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer at Abed's apartment, and everybody's there, and we get this really cute reflection of them and their non-claymation selves. It's really nice.
Right.
And then that takes us into episode 12. I'm going to give to you Asian population studies.
Yeah. This is where we get Rich comes back again, right?
Yes.
Being interested in Annie, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they spent the whole time
right. It was winter break.
They spent winter break dredging
between
the river.
these episodes. Yeah.
Like they're catching up on what they did over their Christmas break as we come back from the Christmas break of the season as well in this episode.
True.
And Annie basically suggests, that they invite Rich to join the study group. He joins anthropology because of her, and they realize that he's the smart guy. He could be beneficial to have in there.
Yeah.
And Jeff doesn't like that.
Yeah. Oh, he's threatened, completely threatened,
because
he's Jeff if he tries.
Yeah, because not only does Annie want to have this perfect guy who's better than him in their study group, she also has a crush on him. So Jeff feels threatened on sort of both of those fronts, even though he knows, I think realistically, nothing can come of him and Annie. Doesn't mean it can't for someone else.
Still being a little territorial.
Exactly. So we get all of that going on, and don't we get a little, what's going on with Troy?
Troy accidentally reveals to Pierce that Chang and Shirley slept together.
Yeah.
Because he can't just keep his mouth shut.
Nope. Yeah, he was like thinking out loud, and basically the line of thinking was just like, and the secret, and Pierce was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, and Pierce is right there to hear it. So Troy ends up, saying that Chang and Shirley slept together, and that's revealed because Shirley has told everyone she is now back with Andre, her husband.
And reveals why, because then Britta basically tries to tear her down about it, and she's like, I know that we do it sometimes for chili pepper tickets, and for this and for that, but like, it's never going to be fulfilling. And she's like, well, I'm pregnant, so it's God's plan for me, basically.
Yeah, she's committed back to being with Andre.
All of this stuff is sort of coming to a head right in the middle of the season, at least with, the Shirley and Chang.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, drama. So you get that going on, a sort of a B story to everyone trying to petition and get these people that they want to be a part of their study group. So they throw a mixer that they invite everyone to.
Yeah.
Chang is offended because he's everywhere and wasn't invited to this mixer to figure out who's going to be in the study group. Yep, exactly. So he's very offended, ends up, storming out because Abed freaks him out on purpose to get him to leave.
It's a mixer. Works every time.
Everyone loves Rich. He comes in with his kettle corn.
Yes.
They're all feeling
We
the
meet
Rich.
Kendra with a Q-U,
Yeah.
who also spells kettle corn with a Q-U.
Most K's are Q-U's for Kendra.
And then Jeff feeling defeated and desperate when Annie confronts him and says, I think we should take a vote. Everyone's kind of gone after the Skittles ran out. I think it's pretty clear who everyone wants to pick. Jeff is like, sure. And then Chang sneaks up from the background with an incredible slow clap to introduce himself for no reason. It's hilarious. And he and Jeff conspire. And I think this is really telling of Jeff. When he wants something, he will do whatever. He will conspire with Ben Chang.
And sell them on Chang.
And say, no, Chang should be in our study group. I know I've been the one who's saying Chang shouldn't be in our study group, but I don't like Rich, and I don't want Annie with Rich this much that I will say bring Chang into the group. And he causes all of this conflict when he gives us a great speech about why they should vote for Ben Chang, and everyone votes, and there's a split vote. Shirley has to break it, and she votes. Didn't she vote for Chang?
She votes for Chang.
That's why
Pierce says, if you don't vote for Rich,
this is the best cut of corn I've ever
had.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll shatter your world.
I heard you.
Exactly. And then that's the thing. So he literally just straight up drops the bomb in front of everybody that they had sex together in front of Andre, while, Shirley's
in front of Andre, in front of Rich, in front of everybody.
In front of everybody, actually,
Drops the bomb.
Yeah, so Andre leaves, so does Rich. Things are super, super awkward.
Yeah, and then we have a scene basically where Andre, who's played by Malcolm Jamal Warner, who was Theo Huxtable from
the Cosby Show.
Right, and he's sitting outside after learning the news that it might be Chang's baby in Shirley, and he's kind of looking out, and Jeff walks up and starts talking to him, and the gist of what he gets to is like, the love of a good woman or the love of someone that cares about you isn't enough to change anybody. Mm-hmm. And then Jeff kind of starts like absorbing that. He's like,
or Annie confronts Jeff about how he was treating Rich.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, there's nothing complicated about this. I like him. I'm going to go ask him out.
Yeah.
She asks him out, and while Jeff is talking to Theo Huxtable after he leaves, Abed basically comes up to Jeff and is like, yeah, I just texted Annie, and she basically told Rich she wants to date him. And he said he likes her, but she's too young for him.
Yep.
And so that's where it leads to the whole scene of where he's running through the rain.
Yeah. And he's running through the rain, and he goes, and there's just a shot where someone opens their apartment door, and it's just Jeff talking. He's like, before you say anything, let me plead. And he gives like a big romantic speech like they do in movies.
He's all wet, covered in rain.
He's all wet. Yeah, exactly. He's like Jason Sparks it up super hard. Or whatever that guy is.
Nicholas Sparks.
Nicholas Sparks, there you go. How little I care about those movies, but know about them because of pop culture. And basically makes this big plea about how you're a really good person, you're a great person, I want to be with you, I want to learn from you. And then slowly we learn the camera turns and he's talking to Rich.
Yeah.
And Rich is just kind of like taken aback and like, oh, really? You want to learn to be a good person? And then Jeff basically explains like, yeah, I want to be a good person, choose it to my own means and kind of be evil, but I do want to learn it. And he basically uses Rich's logic against him, being like, well, you'll be a bad person if you don't help me. And Rich is just like,
you got me there,
all
friend.
Right. Yep. And then Rich kind of in the background takes Jeff for like a good person manipulation training session. And then Jeff kind of
Jeff is trying to grow in his own way.
Yeah, so he's trying to do his own thing.
And he goes to Rich for that.
And him going to Rich after how much animosity he showed towards him is it shows Jeff growing a lot because he's like, I need to learn, and I need to learn from people that aren't like me.
Mm-hmm. That's very, very true.
So it's Jeff growing and compromising a lot more.
Absolutely.
And I think, and I don't know if you have any points on this, Ashley, but at least for me, like, what it accomplishes overall is, like, again, establishes Jeff is still continuing to grow, Annie's advocating for herself more and more. And kind of just also just fleshing out everything that's going on with Shirley and her backstory, because that becomes more of a main story as we move on.
Yeah, and I think it shows Jeff really having to deal with his insecurities and confront those rather than just, ignoring them and pushing them deep down inside where they belong.
Exactly, where they belong. I like that you mentioned it like that.
Yeah.
Who wants to do episode 13, Celebrity Pharmacology? That is a really good one.
Yeah, so it starts off in the study room with Troy and Abed reciting like a very dopey anti-drug awareness.
Yeah, and those are the story arcs we follow. And Annie's drug awareness play and Britta's nephew debacle. That's all one shared story.
That becomes a thing.
Pierce giving Annie money.
And they go on to basically Jeff starts giving his lines every goes on. Pierce isn't happy with his role. Everyone joke is on him.
Pierce
he's drugs.
Wants more lines basically.
Because he's marijuana. He's the villain of the play, which I think touches on, like Ashley said, he's isolated. He's kind of the villain and everything.
Yeah,
but
it reflects that he's the villain in the group.
Yeah, and honestly, Annie probably picked him because he would play a good villain.
Yeah.
So then Pierce isn't happy.
Jeff takes Britta's phone and texts the guy from her phone because he's trying to get her into dating in the 21st century.
They have a study group conversation where Jeff is
Yeah, and then we transition into Pierce sees Annie collecting cans, follows her home, learns that she lives atop a sex shop, basically. Dildopolis.
Location 2.
And he goes and visits her basically and says that they're both alike. They're independent and cute.
Yeah.
And he basically gives her money to help her, but then guilts her into giving him more lines in the play.
Exactly. And
Annie kind of offers it and is like, maybe you can just...
She's like, why did you come here? And he's like, oh, well, the play, but I guess it's stupid now. So she does willingly give it to him because...
Annie, but a little, an inch. And he makes that inch quite a mile.
Exactly, because I write down, Pierce goes home and we learn he wasn't a child star. He starts watching these old home videos of himself. We learn again about his sordid relationship with his father, that he really wasn't a star, and then he loses it. That's what basically is the domino, and that it makes him go crazy with this play specifically.
Yeah, and I love that we get this shot of he's watching this commercial he failed to be in with his father, and it's just silence, but Chevy Chase is a pretty good actor. You see this anger, resentment, rage, and sadness fill his face until the end. He looks like he's about to explode, and then they cut to black because that's just how affected by his father is.
Yeah, and then so he guilts Annie when she doesn't want to make the changes that he asked for. And then it's funny because there's a lot of stuff going on all at once. In the meantime, Britta reveals to Jeff that Marcus is actually her 14-year-old nephew who's going to be at the show. And
he's all of a sudden so excited.
And
Jeff's been sexting her under his guise.
Yeah, so he's trying to deal with that. He basically steals her phone and is trying to involve
because he mistakes him, not because he's a weird nephew thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, because because again, I said earlier, he's trying to bring Britta into dating in the 21st century. He thinks Marcus is the guy she's talking to. It's actually her nephew.
Yeah.
Pierce, during the play, now they're actually doing it, the whole middle school's there, he runs completely off script and he starts...
goes rampant.
Yeah, he goes rampant and
takes
he basically...
control of the show.
Exactly. One thing that I wrote down is continuing the whole Marcus-Jeff thing. While Jeff is literally in the coffin, pretending to be dead, he's texting Marcus from
inside the coffin. Yeah, I love it. And you can see him in the
Plus,
crowd,
we get an
too.
amazing prop of Jeff Winger in his kitty cat costume because he's a cool cat. He's in a kitty cat costume with sunglasses and a leather jacket, dressing like him and Britta.
And so it goes through the whole thing. Pierce gets off script. He basically makes the whole audience of students fall in love with drugs. They literally go to awesome. I love drugs and all this stuff. And so Annie's feeling really guilty about all this. Pierce reveals that he gave Annie money. And that basically causes all the problems with the rest of the group.
Yep.
Annie leaves because they're like, we did all this for your fucking morals, and it turns out you don't have any.
Yeah.
So they don't know what they're going to do to basically pull everybody back from being obsessed with drugs now, all the kids, right? That's where Chang comes into the rescue.
Just a crazy person? No.
He pretends to be drugs, acts like a maniac. I control your life.
Yes.
And it's really, really fun because then it shows Chang putting himself out there for the group.
Yeah, and trying for them. And a lot for Shirley, because there's moments in this episode where he's trying to get Shirley to, like, talk to him and like, take him seriously because I might be the father of your unborn child. So it's him doing this as a crazy person, but also doing this for the group and to help them succeed and get their message across.
He does take a beating, literally, because the children
ends up antagonizing all the kids, and they literally attack him. They run at him on the stage. What does he say? Bring it on, Bow Wow!
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they throw baseballs and tackle him down.
Yeah. Yep. And it ends up looking like Annie's play is a success because now they depend on drugs, and now they hate drugs. And Annie's apologetic, thanks the whole group for forgiving her. And basically she has a moment with Pierce. She's like, you know what? I understand where you're coming from. You need to be needed. I forgive you. Give me some time. Yeah. But I'm going to be independent because I do want to be an independent person. I'm not going to rely on you like I was relying on my parents.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's a growth moment for both of them.
I think
Absolutely.
so. I think it's interesting because Pierce confronts her at first and says, even though I'm not wrong or I didn't do anything wrong, he doesn't apologize. No. He doesn't take accountability or ownership for anything that he's doing. But Annie is doing that, and it's very interesting to see her do that, and then to see Pierce accept all of that, but then also not own up to basically fucking everything up.
Yeah. And again, something that gets carried through all the way through the end of the season.
Yeah.
And what ends up coming to a head in the overall conflict.
Yep.
I also like that you mentioned that, like, Annie says, like, I need a day, and then, like, the next episode, it's like, and Pierce wasn't invited, and it can't help but, like, kind of inferring, like, it's kind of getting to the point where, like, you know what, you messed up, you should control, we need a little time
for your actions.
There's punishment.
Because they're just getting more and more, like, he's upping the ante.
Every single time.
And it's affecting them.
He almost got 50 kids, like, to love drugs, and all because he wanted attention.
He needed
that horrible
validation.
reason.
Yeah.